Hello and welcome. I'm Claire Feldman, your host and guide on this journey to thriving in private practice without the burnout. Are you a passionate therapist who's struggling with the entrepreneurial side of things? Do you wish you could serve great fit clients at times that suit you? Are you seeking financial stability so you can continue doing what you love? If so, then you're in the right place. I know firsthand the difficulties of navigating the business aspects of therapy, from building a website to managing social media, but I've made all the mistakes so you don't have to. Together we'll explore how you can build and grow your dream practice. So let's get started. So, Vicky, you are very welcome to the podcast. It's really lovely to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And maybe just before we get into our conversation today, it'd be great if you could just introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Vicky Schilling. I am a business coach and I'm a self-belief business coach. I am primarily helping people in the health and wellness space. And the things I'm sure we're going to get into, the things that I realize that I help people with the most is, as well as the kind of practical stuff that needs setting up that I know you help your clients with in their business to market themselves and be visible and put together good packages and prices. It's really the self-belief part that I think is underlining what makes or breaks someone's practice and someone's business often, whether they are able to implement the plan, do the marketing, show up and be visible, and where self-doubt might show up, how that shows up and how we can probably not silence it, but, work alongside it so that we can still build businesses.
And that was very much why I wanted to speak with you today on this particular topic of self-belief, because obviously we've been in each other's worlds for a few years now. And maybe just as a little bit of a background, how I know you, Vicky, is because you were my mentor. I was trying to think how long ago that was. Was that maybe about 2 years ago?
Maybe 2 or 3 years, maybe even. Yeah. When
I
you
think
came down
so.
to Dublin. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was, 2 or 3 years ago. I worked with you one-on-one for 6 months as my mentor. And then I was in your group mastermind afterwards. And just for a little bit of a flattery of ego here, like, you were really fundamental for me in up-leveling in my own private practice and really working on my own self-belief around the value that I offer and the pricing that I set and all of that kind of side of it. And it was actually also seeing what you were doing inside your membership that created the idea for me. And I remember having a conversation with you in Dublin saying, I really like the idea of what you're doing and mentoring. And that's what actually planted the seed for me to start my own membership then for counselors and therapists. So we've been in each other's world now for a little while. And I love following you and what you do. And I'm always in awe of everything that you do. But there was a real noticeable shift from maybe the more marketing business side in your messaging. Definitely a very notable shift towards more content around self-belief. And I thought, well, that is a really great topic because it's something that we all struggle with. And I thought that's a really good topic for us to kind of speak about. And what I'd love to maybe hear is, what was it that made that shift happen?
Yeah. It's so interesting you say that, because it made me really think over the last 2 years. I started to wonder, actually, the shift, I suppose, started, and I'm wondering whether it was hormones when I was pregnant with my second one, and starting to think realizing my work was going to have to change in some ways, having 2 children, not just one that I could siphon off into childcare while she was still small, and still act like I could work 9 to 5 all the time. Like, things were going to change coming up. And I don't know whether it was the hormones or what it was, the kind of few years that I'd been growing the business, helping people with the packaging and the pricing and the website and the messaging and the social media marketing and all of those things. Something started to shift, like, this just isn't feeling quite as fulfilling anymore. I think the market is changing rapidly. There's lots of experts in lots of these different areas now. And I had broadly been helping people with all of them and just knew I would simply not be able to keep up. Certainly when I was pregnant, I was asleep by 5 p.m., 6 p.m. anyway, just exhausted anyway, and knew that wasn't really going to change massively. And started to feel, when I really reflected on it and was really looking at how much the sort of coaching industry was having to adjust to post-COVID, lots of people selling a lot of crap that actually didn't work really. And that the real emphasis is increasingly, quite rightly, on impact and results, outcomes, helping people with one thing and doing that really well, really impact. That I thought I could do better at it, that I kind of wanted to niche down into like, what is it that I help you with? What's my secret sauce? What's the magic here for me? And what's the bit that I realize people are most stuck with that could really change them and shift them? And actually, I wrote my book, Just Start Now, in 2021, 2022, published it. And that was really around the thoughts and the mindset and, all the practical things, the blueprints that we have, the programs, just price it like this, just sell it like this, magically you'll be fully booked. And realizing that actually 95% of people don't find it is that simple. And that was a bit that fascinated me. Like, why? Why is it that people can't just do the thing, can't just start now? And that's where I started sort of scratching a little bit, feeling like that was the rabbit hole I wanted to go down a little bit more and help people so that they could find any strategy, any plan, any wonderful membership like yours, any, mentoring advice, and go, I have the courage and the self-belief and can overcome my voice of self-doubt and actually implement that plan. So last year I studied with Sas Petherick at the Self-Belief Coaching Academy and added that as a kind of qualification to my coaching skills and, tooled myself up ready for my clients as well to really just to go deep on that. You've got the plan, you've got the incredible qualifications. What the heck is going on in your head? What is holding you back? And how can we keep you moving and keep you, keep that business growing, even with that voice there?
I've probably got two questions off the back of that. Maybe the first question is, what do you think you kind of learned, or how did the self-belief coaching training, like how did that really change you kind of as a person?
Yeah, massively, because naturally when you're doing coaching training, you are being coached yourself. So I was in a little coaching pod with a couple of other coaches and we had to try out the tools on one another. And the real permission slip, and it's lovely talking to you about this from a therapy point of view, is from a traditional coaching perspective, I've always been trained that we don't go into the past. We are not therapists. We are not counselors. We are not qualified. We don't talk about what happened before, even yesterday. We just look forward and we look at the future all the time. And actually the training really gave me permission in a really structured and safe way to acknowledge with clients, stuff has gone on before you arrived here setting up your business. There are formative experiences, there are beliefs and stories that you now hold about yourself, about your worth, about what work is, about what money means and how you earn it, that are all impacting your ability to post on social media, list yourself on that directory, get your website set up, whatever it is that you're being advised to do. And so that is where I started to do that work on myself, really acknowledge the kind of stories and things that I was carrying with me. I think the biggest one when we look at the kind of fears and the risks that our brain is perceiving was a story I've carried with me from childhood which is, if you do this, or if you are, your authentic self, or you follow your passion and do what you want, you're going to disappoint someone. For me, it was disappointing a parent. I'm not being the child they wanted me to be. I'm not, fulfilling what they thought I should be doing. And and then just being able to see through a really different lens how that shows up, how that manifests in my work, what I do, what I don't do, where I avoid things, where I procrastinate, or I, doom scroll instead of actually taking that action, and why that was happening. Loads of compassion then for the reality of that happening, and being able to tool myself up then to show up, even though I now know and understand that voice a little bit better in my mind, being able to just see how I'm operating a little bit more honestly. Okay, I'm avoiding that today, or I'm avoiding that in this moment. I picked up my phone to scroll or gone off to clean the kitchen instead of sitting down and, analyzing the feedback on my, latest course. Why is that? Because you're afraid you've disappointed people. Right. Okay. How are we going to, what do I need to think instead? How do I need to show up? It's all the same things I do with a client that I can now do for myself.
And it's fair to say that we all do that. Although none of my procrastination takes me to cleaning, funny enough. I don't go to dim scrolling. It'll take me whatever, but nothing takes me to cleaning. But it's fair to say that we all engage in those really unhelpful behaviors. And whenever you were talking, it was making me wonder, like, how many people actually recognize that that's what it is that's going on, and how do you help them recognize what it is that's going on? Because, like you kind of said, like, we can do all the strategy in the world, and we can blame so many things for why we're not getting clients, or why our business isn't working, or why these other things aren't working. But how do we actually realize that so much of it is perhaps coming from our own beliefs that we hold?
Yeah, I think you're right. Most people, when they come to me at that, without that awareness, will say, I just need to be more disciplined. I just need a bit more structure. I just need someone to hold me accountable. I just need someone to force me to do it. It's that kind of like push mentality. Like, oh, it's just a silly, lazy part of me that I just need to overcome. And you're going to give me a kick up the bum and then I'll get on and do it. And actually, what I am trying to do through my own marketing, through my own messaging, and then through the work that I would do with clients, is to say, your procrastination or your doom scrolling or whatever is a protection mechanism. My fear that I'm going to disappoint people and the way I'm avoiding doing something is protecting me from the perceived risk that, that I will feel like that again, that I will, go there again mentally. And so actually we do quite a bit of work. Again, like I say, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a counselor. We don't go into it in, huge detail, but we do nod to, what is the belief here? What is it you think is going to happen if you post that regularly on your Instagram, or set up your mailing list and, invited people to a free webinar, whatever it is? What is it you are afraid is going to happen? And where might that story have come from? Where can you map that out? Might give that to clients as a bit of an exercise. Where could that, what other examples through your life have reiterated and reaffirmed that that is the truth? When I am visible, I will be embarrassed, for example. I was working with another client and we got talking about this, and she said, actually, really funnily, well, now we talk about it, it reminds me of a time when I was at primary school. I was the narrator. I finished my piece. The kids weren't ready to come on. And so the teacher made me sing a song on stage in front of the whole audience. And then all my friends, laughed at me and mocked me the next day. I was like, right, well, holy cow, if there isn't a reason there that visibility equals embarrassment, and therefore, of course, you don't want to show up and be visible if that's a story
Locked in there.
Absolutely, like core memory. Oh dear. Okay. So, and again, even a subconscious level, and you'll know this, of course, from your work, that's operating and that's in there. So how can we now, try and find some other beliefs to build evidence for instead? Because ultimately those things are going to stop you in your work and showing up and telling people excitedly about what it is that you do.
And you think that whenever you're talking about that example, that definitely makes me think about, like, people within my community and in my kind of field, that there is huge anxieties around being visible and showing up on social media and being on video. And there is there is concerns, and there is a dialogue around the ethics around that in our profession. But actually, I think so much more of it is to do with judgment. The fear of judgment, the fear of criticism seems to be huge.
Yeah, another fear can be conflict, that something you will say and someone else will disagree with, or that you'll create some kind of argument. And again, that might be something you experienced in the past. You don't want to create conflict. Again, especially those of us who are women, we're often, our audiences are primarily women. People identify as female, being brought up as female, have been told to be nice, to be small, just to get on with everybody, not to rock the boat, not to be controversial. So then when we were given the marketing advice of, be a bit provocative, or say what you really think, or get on your soapbox, that is not safe. There is a very large part of your brain that is saying, absolutely don't do that. Don't go there. That is a highly risky strategy. Say something super neutral and vanilla that nobody can ever find offense with. That's much safer. Yeah, it's much safer, but it's not going to get you any clients. It's not going to help you stand out from the crowd.
And when you think about and just all the ways in which that self-belief does show up, and the way that might hold us back. So hold us back from being ourselves, perhaps on social media, from showing up and say something maybe that might be slightly controversial or make you stand out a little bit. That how even just that self-belief is a thread through all areas of your business, and how potentially it affects the bottom line in terms of your ability. And we don't really think about it like that, especially when we're in a helping field and as counselors and therapists, that all our energy and our focus is on on serving others and on helping others and do a good job. But the bit that we tend to be pretty rubbish at is actually thinking about the fact that we need to earn money and that we need an income. And we don't seem to equate the two, that me not showing up here, me not talking about this, me not sharing these, this information or these parts or whatever it is directly potentially affecting the bottom line of my business.
Yeah. Yeah. If you fully, that's one exercise I often do with clients is, what would you like to be doing? Like, what's the goal? What would you like to achieve? What are all the ways that you could actually achieve that goal? So let's take, I'd like to get my website set up, or I would like to, start a live series on Instagram or something like that, chatting to colleagues. Here are all the steps that it would take. Then I say, well, what are you doing instead? What are all the procrastinations? What's the doom scrolling we're doing? Where are we squirreling away our time instead of actually doing those actions? And then I say, well, if I said to you, you can never do any of those things ever again, they are absolutely boxed off, I'm not allowing it, and you can only do the thing in the first column, what is the fear here? Like, what is it that you're worried about? And it makes you realize that self-belief is underlying a lot of what we do and don't do. Like you say, like how we price ourselves, how we market ourselves. Do I believe I am good enough? Do I believe I can get change for clients? Do I believe that someone thinks this is worth paying money for? I believe that they think I personally am worth paying this money for? It underlines everything.
And the bit you're saying there around the pricing, this is something I've done a lot of work on, and I did work with you around kind of the money mindset piece of it, but it still shows up. It still shows up. It definitely doesn't go away. And I was listening to another podcast recently, and I can't remember exactly who it was, but it was about like the counseling and the wellness fields being predominantly female based, and the origins are maybe being set up by female founders and who have been traditionally had a partner and been in a relationship where the man has been the main income, and so the female earning potential was always it was set much smaller, and how we've just sort of established a whole kind of wellness and counseling industry on
That
fake
principle.
on that principle.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's also this kind of slight fallacy that, again, those of us identify as female, that it's kind and nice to have very low prices, that somehow makes us more likable, again, reduces the chance of conflict or judgment. Who am I? I'm certainly here in Ireland. I find there's a lot of, what would people in the village say, or what will my mum's friends say, or what will my school friends think if I put my website up and I say my prices are 200 quid a session, like, well, you've got to pay me 1,500 quid if you're going to work with me for 6 months or whatever it is. I can't do that because so-and-so's granny down the road is going to have judgment about that. And again, it's not to negate that or to laugh at that, because it feels real to that protective survivor part of yourself. That feels like a very real risk. And we have to understand that those people are not our ideal customers. They are not the people that we are expecting or wanting to buy from us and invest in our services, and stay focused on the work that we're doing, that building of that self-trust and self-belief that we are worthy of earning good money ourselves, standing alone without a partner, and that there are people out there that want and are looking to invest in something like that can genuinely fix their problem or help them move towards that solution. I just did a discovery call with someone earlier, and it is interesting, someone at that very early stage of having just qualified, like, do you think there's a market? Do you think anyone would pay for that? And I was like, the work you need to do is not building a website, or, we can do all of that, but the work you need to do now is believing people want this. They want to pay for it. They want the gift of investing in you, and they want you to be that confident person that says, I can absolutely help you with the skills that I've got.
That was probably the biggest thing that you helped me with whenever I was thinking about, because I did the whole rebrand and creating the new website, and knew that alongside that, I wanted to increase and the price that I was going to be setting myself at was significantly above all other counselors therapists in my local area. And there was huge dialogues around that. And, the narrative of nobody can afford that. Nobody's going to pay that. And it was you that really kind of helped me with that there are people out there who want your services, and there are people out there who your price point is absolutely right for. And that's who you focus on, and that's where you put your energy to. Counseling Facebook groups are absolutely wild with that kind of narrative coming in, where people are saying, oh, cost of living crisis, people can't afford that. You can't increase your fees. Nobody's going to pay that fee. And actually, a lot of shaming. There's a lot of shaming goes on in some of those groups about counsellors and therapists who do set a higher and more premium fee. And actually, the reality is there is a price point that is right for everyone.
Yeah, there's a price, there's a person for every price, and it's not therapists alone. I work with nutritional therapists, the same in those communities. Health coaching to a certain extent. Oh, everyone just wants it for free. No one's ever going to pay us. We need to break those cycles. We need, and actually, interestingly, I came from the classical music industry, from the arts, and again, even that I feel like gave me a decade long like complex. Nobody wants this. Nobody wants to invest. No one's willing to pay. It's always really a scrabble. And just thinking, isn't it interesting when you've got other people work in banking or finance or luxury goods, or, just have a completely different attitude to what is normal, quote unquote, to earn and to charge, and how to show up, lawyers, and, it's just a different world. It's just different beliefs, different people you've surrounded yourself with that tell a different story to you, and then therefore impact how you show up.
Yeah, and that the people that you surround yourself with is a really interesting point as well. Because I was having a conversation with another therapist, and all her experience has been in working in community, where she will be working with clients who are accessing her services free of charge or low cost, working in more disadvantaged communities. So she does very much hold that story of people couldn't afford to charge me, couldn't afford to pay more than £50 per session for me, because that's everything that she has been surrounded with. And so we had to kind of do that work and have that conversation about, but broadening beyond what you've been used to and what you've surrounded yourself with. There's a whole other world out there.
And just to say, for anyone's thinking, but I don't want to become a therapist that only serves rich people, your ability to serve a much wider community and people from all different walks of life and all different incomes is vastly expanded if you earn a really good income, and those that can pay do pay you and pay you and compensate you at the level that you are, deciding that you are worthy of, because then you have freedom, you have capacity to go, do you know what? I'm going to offer a free space. I'm going to volunteer some time in that center. I am going to, put 5 people through my membership or my group program for free or on a scholarship, for those that can't afford it and that don't have the money in the same way that others do. But you will not have the capacity to do that, because you will be burned out and exhausted if you try and price on the basis that everybody is hard up and nobody can afford your services. And again, that does come down to belief. I think belief in yourself, belief that the service that you are offering is worthy of the price that you are charging, the one that you've done the maths on, and a belief that people want it, you are worthy of it, and they are out there looking for you.
Absolutely. You can't offer the best of yourself if you are stuck in scarcity. Scarcity mindset and stuck in burnout is not the best place for you to be operating in. And I wonder how much of that, like it's probably something that's not necessarily tangible, like being able to see how much of maybe not attracting in the clients that people want, or not bringing in the income that they want. Like how are we able to see how much of it is self-belief and how much of it is like lack of strategy or knowledge? Because there's a real practical side to it, isn't there? That you do need to know, who your ideal client is. You do need to know how to build a website. You do need to know how to write copy to engage people. So there is a practical side of that, but it'd be really interesting to know how much of it is that and how much of it actually fundamentally is self-belief.
It's so interesting you say that, because I did a blog post, actually, we'll put it in the show notes, around what do you do? I started the blog on the basis of being asked repeatedly the question, how do I deal with people that keep saying, yeah, but just not right now, or yeah, I want to do it later, or I can't afford it right now, or, kind of pushing down the line all the time. Like, why are people just not instantly wanting to pay me money and going all in? And you're right. A very, very super basic level, there are some fundamentals you have to have in place. You need to have positioned yourself as an authority. The messaging needs to be absolutely, landing with people. You need to have a clear package and offer that it is that they're going for. And you need to be being seen by the right people. You need to be visible in those places. But beyond that, I would say 80% of the work is actually, are you, and I don't like the term self-sabotage, but are you actually blocking in some way people readily coming to you because you're afraid of something? If you can imagine, I say, right, okay, tell me who your ideal client is. Right, I've got 10 of them. I'm going to send them all to your, inbox tomorrow, and they're all going to want to start with you immediately. What do you think? What's the fear that comes up? What comes, and then we start to unpick, I don't believe I can help them, or I believe that they will think it's too simple, or they want their money back, or again, maybe they'll be judgmental about, my practices and how I show up, or like, okay, that's the work you need to be doing. Yes, there's some basics, but once you've got that website, you've got a clear package and you're being seen by the right people, the work is now internal. How do I feel, and how can I remove or lessen the fears and the doubts that I can't serve these people, that doing this and being visible and taking these clients on will somehow diminish me. A lot of people I work with have experienced burnout before. So a lot of the fear is actually, I don't have capacity to take these people on. If 10 people turn up at my door, I would be overwhelmed. I would be exhausted. I wouldn't see my family anymore. That's a belief we need to work on as well, to know that you have capacity, that you have systems, that you are able to hold space for those clients. Yes, some practical things you need to put in place, but also just knowing and telling your body and your mind, it is safe to take on clients. I am in control of my business and my workload. So even things as subliminal as that, I think sometimes just need identifying.
Yeah, that's a really good one. And even just things like that, not just that I'll be overwhelmed, but what if I can't help them? What if they don't get the outcome or the transformation? We want like so much of that potentially running kind of underneath the story. And I love that idea of like creating the boundaries around how do you want your practice to look, and acting as if, even if you don't even have a client through the door yet, how do you set up your practice the way that you want it to be, that matches the energy that you want it, the hours that you want to work? Like, how do you almost set those fundamentals up right from the beginning? Because what a lot of therapists will do at the beginning is be so desperate to get clients and to get started in private practice. They're saying yes to everything. They're saying yes to all the hours. They're working at times and working with non-ideal clients. But how do we actually foster that self-belief right from the beginning around boundaries, around energy, around who my ideal client is?
Yeah, I think a lot of that's like kind of visualization work of like one of my favorite questions to ask clients is, what would fully booked you do? What would fully booked Claire do? Like what is Claire in who's fully booked in 6 months' time working with dream clients? What is she going to be so grateful to you now for having done? If you already knew, I think that's another one that Jen Sincero in her book, You're a Badass at Making Money. She talks about this idea because there is a warehouse at the end of the road that has all the money, all the clients, everything you ever wanted. And it's just sat waiting for you. Like it's on your path. It is coming to you. It is just sat there waiting for you to claim it. If you genuinely felt that in your body, that full trust that everything you want is on its way to you, what would you do? How would you market yourself? How would you show up? What would you write on that website? How would you go and put yourself out there? Who would you be talking to? What would you be telling them about your service? How would you price yourself? Coming at it and just trying that as an identity trying it on, even to just do that 1%, what one little thing would fully booked version of me do today to help get closer? Because it is that constant cycle, isn't it? If we don't think and behave like her now, we won't ever get there. And we won't ever get there if we keep thinking and behaving just like, kind of start a beginning version of Claire. Like we've actually got to break that cycle and start thinking and behaving like her in order to become her.
Yeah. And it was actually from your goal setting. I can't remember if it was must have been this January, not last January. You did a goal setting session, and that was really helpful. And I actually stole it and started doing it within my membership because it was so helpful, actually thinking about the long-term vision. Like, what do you want your private practice to look like 5 years from now? and really see that and feel that, and where are you, and what does your day look like, and what's your energy like, and really, really seeing that vision really clearly, because that helps you then to start to bring that back to, well, what does that look like for me now? And how do I show up, and how do I take action, and how do I create opportunities for myself that are very much aligned with what that vision looks like?
Yeah, because I think otherwise it's so easy to obviously open social media, even your inbox, and find you're bombarded with, you should be doing this, you should be marketing like this, you should be creating this content, you should be listed on this directory, you should, should, left, right, and center. And unless you've got that vision to come back to, now hold on, my goal is to create a practice that looks like this and to enable this in my life. And then, like you say, like roll it back into teeny tiny steps of, okay, what does the next 30 days look like? So I can start to move even one increment towards that bigger picture, not to be overwhelmed by it, to go into full trust of that is coming to me. And now what am I going to be really grateful for that I started in this 30 days or this 90 days that's going to help me move towards that? And it doesn't matter what everybody else is doing right now, that this is what I need to be doing to move towards my version of the perfect practice.
I think you've touched upon something that I think that we can struggle with in kind of the wellness and counseling field, and I definitely do struggle with it a bit myself, is the actually setting goals, number one. Even having goals to work towards, but then checking on your goals and actually reflecting on how you're doing, but without it being really stringent, without it being a punishing exercise, without it being, setting absolutely ridiculous goals for yourself, but actually, what are you working towards if you've goals set in your business?
I'm doing, and I'm going to, hopefully by the time this comes out, I'm going to be able to share the results with you. I'm doing a survey at the moment on the state of solopreneur self-belief to really look into this. And one of the really interesting data points that I've uncovered, and I'll have the final data in the next week, is I said, what most affects your self-doubt? What most triggers your self-doubt? And the biggest line by far at the moment is lack of progress. And I looked at that and immediately just thought, but if you're not tracking anything, how the F do you know if you're making progress or not? And you're right. I think there's a huge amount that we hate failing. We hate setting goals and failing at them. And we've done it lots and lots of times. Everyone's done the old classic with New Year's resolutions and starting a new course and blah, blah, blah. And this time it's going to be different, and then not. And so we don't want to fail. So we just give up setting the goals. But then, as this data point is already proving, your self-doubt is only going to be forced harder and harder into, entrenching, if you aren't tracking anything, because you don't know if you're making any progress. You don't know if you're moving along. And progress and things to track doesn't just mean money and clients. There's so many other metrics that you can track for yourself. I have asked in that survey as well, like, do you track how you feel in your business? How much confidence and self-belief you feel like you have. Is that something you've thought about tracking or trying to monitor? Obviously, it's a slightly, dark art. It's not like, money in my bank in the same way. There's lots of other things, like, how do I feel about this? What other impact have I had? What great conversations have I sparked? Where have I put boundaries in? Like, so many other things that we can track and see and chart progress. That doesn't necessarily mean like we have to set things where we feel like, oh, I'm gonna fail at that. But yeah, I definitely find it's usually because we've made it mean something. Setting a goal and not achieving it means what? Like, fill in that sentence for me. I make it mean that I'm not worthy. I'm no good at this. I'm not cut out for this. People don't want it. It doesn't mean any of those things. It's literally just a neutral fact. You tried something, it didn't work. You learned some information. You're going to try again. That's literally the cycle of running your own business.
Mm-hmm. And that can be, like you're saying, that the measures can be things like, I'm thinking about counselors and therapists that are just getting started. It's even things like the connections that they make and how many people they've reached out to. Because I think there's a real misconception, I think, going into private practice and having the assumption that when you build it and they will come sort of thing, and having an unrealistic time scale of how quickly they're going to attract clients and how quickly they're going to be full. But actually, when goals and focus can be on things like making connections with other people and networking, that those are things that may not pay off immediately, but absolutely can pay off maybe 3 months, 6 months, 9 months kind of down the line, but are, absolutely have huge value in them.
Yeah. And that's where I like this self-belief work, because it keeps you focused on the process and rewarding yourself and, finding satisfaction and fulfillment in taking the actions and actually tracking things where you are in control of it. How many posts did I put out on social media? What did I do on my website? Did I create a new page on my website for one of my new services? Like you say, did I reach out and go and have a virtual coffee with someone who potentially could refer me? Doesn't matter whether they did or not in the future. It just means something you can track that you're in control of. That I think makes all the difference and helps us build that self-belief that we are doing something, making progress.
And is there anything else? So something like that is really helpful, actually, using your goals alongside looking at having compassion for yourself when you don't quite meet them, and improving your self-belief by stepping outside your comfort zone, doing these things ordinarily that you don't do and learning and evolving from them. That's a great way to bolster self-belief. Is there anything else that you would recommend for people listening? Like, I know there's no such thing as a simple way to improve. This is very much an ongoing process, but even like little daily tasks or anything that you would encourage people to do on a regular basis to kind of help check in and think about their self beliefs.
I think that probably the best thing to say is I have a little freebie which actually helps with the process I'll try and explain, which is called paralysis to progress, which is if you are feeling a bit stuck or you don't know what to do next, or you are, procrastinating a bit, how do we shift and move forward? And I think the simplest thing we can do to turn it into something you do daily is to identify, like we've been talking about, what is it I'm afraid of here? What is the belief that I hold here? If I do this, what do I think is going to happen? And then what would I like to believe instead? What would be more helpful here, or even what would be neutral here? And can I today find a tiny piece of evidence for that? So if I have a belief, being visible means I will be embarrassed, for example, like my client standing up there as a primary school child. And now that's, impacting putting out podcast episodes or, putting out things on social media. Okay. What would be more helpful to believe here instead? And sometimes I find even those neutral ones of just people with successful businesses or successful therapists find new ways to be visible or are visible every week in their business. Okay, how can I go away and just find a tiny piece of evidence that reaffirms that as a belief for me? And then hopefully slowly move it into, okay, well, if they're doing it and they're, giving me lots of evidence and showing me what is possible, how can I bring that into what I could do and use that as kind of inspiration? So the tiny daily actions for me are, how can I find evidence for a belief that I want to try and bolster and uphold in my mind, to try and unpick one that I know is very unhelpful. So for me, it might be, if I put my work out into the world, I'm going to disappoint someone. Okay, what would be a more helpful thing to believe here? Perhaps it is, I can believe if I put my work out, or if I, look at my results, that I actually delight people, that actually they are happy. Okay, right, Vicky, your job today is to go and find one little piece of evidence that reaffirms for your brain people actually like what you do. They find it really helpful. This lovely conversation with you, Claire, is a nice piece of evidence that I can collect so that people enjoy and find it beneficial to work with me. I can put that in the little bank of evidence. Yes, please, that helps. That for me is where we start layering on more self-belief and can just quieten that voice of self-doubt. Like, that's just protecting me. And actually, I don't believe that is my truth.
Yeah, brilliant. That's a great piece of advice. And just one final thing that it's actually made me remember that you told me is where you mentioned there about seeing other people do things helps to give you the inspiration that it's possible for you. Certainly when I was doing that whole up leveling in my practice, seeing other therapists, examples of other therapists and really other therapists further afield doing what I aspired to do was really helpful. But there's a line there of, as long as it doesn't turn inwards and become comparisonitis and judgment. And one thing that you always said, and that sticks in my mind, is when you notice that happening, saying good for them and for me.
That's it. It's a Lucy Sheridan trick.
Yeah.
Physically good for you, pointing out to them, same for me, back at yourself. Do it as many times as you need to just shake it out of your body and to genuinely know if it is available to them, it is available to me. I've just done a post actually around why we find Generation Z, the kind of 1995 to 2010 born people, so triggering those of us more millennial and Gen X. And I often find that's because they are not burdened with all of these stories and these beliefs that we were given in the 70s, 80s, and 90s about work should be hard and, stay small. Don't, it's embarrassing, keep quiet or, don't rock the boat. All these other things that we've been talking about, they have a bit less of that. They're just like, well, I've got the internet and a phone and, a blueprint. Great, cool. I can go and make some money. Unfortunately, some of us have to just do the bit of the work first to get to that same starting point because we have all the same tools available. It's absolutely available to you too. It's just some of that inner work needs to, all of you listening as counselors and therapists will know that as well. You're helping your clients with it. Do that work on yourself because that is what will actually help you get clients and make consistent income.
100%. And we're all guilty of that. We're all guilty of seeing, because we do have things at the touch of our fingertips that we can see what other therapists are doing and who's got a massive following and who's got loads of clients. So it's very easy to get caught into that comparisonitis. So that's always a little reminder, because I catch myself doing it, and I'm sure you do from time to time as well. When you catch yourself doing it, actually just being able to stop and notice that and say, actually, good for you. And that's possible for me as well, is really, really encouraging and affirming. I am going to share that little free download. It's a download, is it?
Yep. It's an audio guide and a little worksheet. So whatever works for you, whatever you find most helpful.
I will put it in the show notes for people to access. Could you also just let people know where they can find you as well, Vicky?
Yep. Best place is my website, vickyschilling.com. That's got all the different, the book that I've talked about, my own podcast and ways to work with me. And then mostly I hang out on Instagram. So if you want to come and leave me a little voice note or a message there, I'm vicky.schilling at Instagram.
Super. Thank you so much for joining me today. That conversation was fabulous, and I know my audience are going to love it.
Thank you so much.
So that's it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, if you found the episode helpful, I would really appreciate it if you could share it with other counsellors and therapists in private practice. If you'd like to find out more about me and how I can help you build and grow your private practice, hop on over to my website, which is www.prosperinprivatepractice.com, and you'll also find me on Instagram under the same name. But until next time, I will see you soon. Take care.